What is an annoying myth people still believe? There's a bit of truth to that actually. Decades ago, police wouldn't file a missing persons report for at least 24 hours because they thought most teens would show up soon enough after partying. Well, that of course all changed when someone reported their teen daughter missing and she was found killed in a nearby river a week later. But sadly, it's a struggle to get the police to act on it. Years ago, a family member announced that she planned to kill herself, and took off. The police basically said, "What if she wasn't being serious?" She sure seemed serious. Then they asked, "What if she's still in the house?" It's a small 3-bedroom house. I'm certain that a whole adult woman isn't hiding in the closet because I saw her leave. Yes, she was eventually found. The police just took their sweet time deciding to look. Well, years ago it was true, and in some cases even longer. If it was a teenager in the 70s, some PDs are on record having families wait a week before accepting a case. It's more one of those things that was true, changed, but through word of mouth and true crime shows that dig up these the misinformation gets twisted around. You can detox your body from toxins and parasites by drinking certain teas or taking some weird medication. Repeated diarrhea and frequent urination doesn't indicate toxins leaving your body. Your liver and kidneys do the job. If your liver is not functioning or you have a kidney disorder, obviously you need help, but it won't be teas that someone on Instagram is boasting about. The worst part is all this granola cookie bullshit has people knee-jerking in the other direction and insisting toxins aren't real. Toxins are absolutely a thing. They come from lots of places and filtering them out of your system is literally the job of your kidneys and liver. It's the piss water someone on TikTok brewed up cleansing your whole body of mystery toxins that's the bullshit part. When I was a teen, me and my girlfriend at the time did the dirty. It was both of our first times and I had always heard that there would be blood and it would hurt or be uncomfortable on the first time for the girl. Well, when there wasn't any bleeding or discomfort, I was heartbroken. I thought she had lied to me or maybe she was cheating on me. It made me really depressed. I never brought it up with her. I was so sure that this was supposed to happen. It wasn't till much later that I learned that not all women go through such things on their first time. I wish I had that information as a teen, and I hope more people talk about this so that other young adults don't have these ridiculous doubts hurt them. I once had crossed a street with heavy traffic and knew that the button was fake, so I just waited at the crosswalk, but the light never changed. The second I pressed the button, it changed. I tried the same thing on the way back and pressing the button instantly changed the light again. I guess there was so little pedestrian traffic and so much vehicular traffic that it made sense to only change the light when there was actually a pedestrian trying to cross. This is a particularly sad one since animals die just because of myths people believe. I haven't seen fishermen cutting off shark fins from fully awake sharks and tossing them in sea afterwards. If you don't know, sharks need to swim in order to breathe, and cutting of their fins and tossing them in water is essentially like throwing a person in water after cutting off their limbs. They drown. Apparently shark fin is a delicacy in some Asian countries. That historical armor was basically useless, only increasing the chance of maybe deflecting a blow if you were lucky. You still see it in movies, shows and games where an knife or sword or arrow will go through armor like it's cardboard. In reality, armor was very useful. Very good armor, like a knight's suit of plate, made the wearer virtually invincible. The best plate could stop even early firearms. A knight in full plate and wielding a shield was pretty much the tank of the medieval battlefield. Doubly so if on horseback. Specialized weapons and a concerted effort was needed to defeat one, although typically no one would try to kill a knight since you can't ransom a corpse. But even simple gambesons, which were made from layers of fabric, could resist a sword cut. High-quality gambesons could resist all but the strongest cuts from specialized cutting swords. Also, that swords were super heavy. A typical one-handed arming sword from the Middle Ages weighed around 3 pounds, 4 max. A two-handed longsword could get up to 5 pounds. Rapiers weighed around the same as other swords, which is contrary to popular belief. Yes, Swinging around a 3 to 4 pounds object would tire someone out, but the people doing so were generally more fit than the people reading this thread. My God, how I despise this one. They out here saying a knight from the Middle Ages spent ridiculous amounts of money, lugged the stuff around with them on campaign, wore it even when it was hot out, and maintained, cleaned their armor all so they can have a 2% less chance of death on the field. Lol. When it comes to warfare throughout human history, as a rule of thumb, if people did something often, meaning the idea was widespread and commonly used, it was probably because it was damn effective. Oh boy, this is a big one. I hear people all the time that say I don't want a raise cause it'll put me in a higher tax bracket, and I'll make less money than I do now because they'll take more taxes. Like, number, they only take that percentage from the additional money you'll be making. You'll still be making more money. For those who don't know, let's just say the tax bracket you're in at $30,000 a year is 10%. And $30,001 plus is taxed at 20%. If you make even $1 a year more, you might think the government will start taking 20% of all your money, which, if that were the case, then yeah, $27,000 is more than $24,000.80. That would be bad. But number, they only take 20% of that $1. Or 20 cents, so you'll be making $27,000.80 after taxes, which is more than $27,000. Say you used to make $30,000 per year, but they offer you a raise of $1,000, so now it's $31,000. Here's how it works. $30,000 at 10%, $30,001, $40,000 at 20%. Previously, at your earlier salary, $30,000 to 10%, or $3,000, equals $27,000. That part stays the same. Now, you make $1,000 more. This is how that works. 30,000 equals 27,000, so that part's the same. Now, they only tax the additional $1,000 at 20%, so, 1,000 to 20%, or 200 equals 800. Your grand total take-home pay is now $27,800. That's $800 more than what you made in the previous year. If you get a raise, it's a good thing. If you're getting paid more money, you're always going to make more than you made before, even when it puts you in a higher tax bracket. Well, unless they raise the lowest bracket percentage much higher the next year, but that's very unlikely. They almost always only raise the taxes on people making 6 figures a year or more. For example, Biden's tax plan would be raising the top marginal tax bracket from 37% to 39.6%, which would only affect those making $462,000 or more a year. In other words, only those in the, roughly, top 1%. So most likely, not you. The raise being a good thing is assuming you are already above the benefits cliff. If it would prevent you from receiving any government assistance you are receiving, that could be a bad thing if that raise is not to a self-sufficient level. Edit. Thanks for all the awards. I researched this and apparently the whole messages bad thing started when a supposed scientist ate a lot of Chinese food and then had a headache and felt kind of bad afterwards, and so him and his buddies decided it must be the message and the food, so they made up some term like Chinese restaurant syndrome or some shit, and everyone started spreading the idea that message was unhealthy because of it. I decided it was the equivalent of someone eating like an entire chocolate cake in one sitting and then deciding chocolate is poison because they got a stomachache. P.S. Fun fact, you know how everything says seaweed is healthy and encourages eating it? Message is supposed to be derived from / is a product of seaweed. On the Netflix show Ugly Delicious, they asked a group of people why they don't like message and they all said they get headaches or some other issue when they eat or smell it. They then give them chips with message in it and they enjoy it until they are told they have message. One even had the audacity to say he felt a headache coming on. This was on the Chinese food episode. And McDonald's was serving their coffee, at that time, at almost 200 degrees, just barely under boiling. For comparison, coffee is normally served as closer to 140 degrees. and will usually have cooled down further than that by the time you actually start drinking it. In the year prior, over 700 people had told McDonald's they had been burned by their coffee. Stella Lee Beck, the woman from the lawsuit, was burned so badly that the skin on her thighs fused together and she quite nearly died. That's how bad the burns were. And as you said, the only thing she actually asked for was her out-of-pocket medical expenses covered, roughly $20,000. McDonald's came back with an insultingly low offer of $800, so she had no choice but to sue. Even then, she still only asked for her medical bills to be covered. It was the jury, not Stella Lee Beck, that decided to make McDonald's pay millions of dollars, because they found that McDonald's had acted so irresponsibly and so negligently, they absolutely had to be punished. I always knew it was a serious disorder that was drastically mischaracterized but didn't grasp the full impact it could have on someone's life until my younger sister, 13, started developing it about a year ago. She needs everything to be clean, but to the point it can take an hour to wash her hands, leaving them chapped and cracked. It can take literally hours for her to shower, think 4-5 hours. Then she wipes her whole body down with a full pack of baby wipes after the shower. It takes several hours to get ready even if she doesn't shower because she has this whole routine. To go somewhere at 7 a.m., she has to start getting ready at 2 a.m. It's taking over her entire life and I feel so bad for people who suffer from this condition. ADD/ADHD is pretty misunderstood too. I was born with ADD. The one no one seems to talk about because they think it's an improper term without the H when it's actually a subset of the same disorder, minus the hyperactivity, hence no H. Also, people with ADHD are not constantly bouncing off the walls with no attention. In fact, we can experience hyperfocus, dumping all our energy into one thing that interests us. Most people's understanding of mental disorders is based on stereotypes, and it needs to stop. Update: it has been brought to my attention by several people that ADD is now outdated. The two versions still exist but the official terms have changed. So what I have is now called attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, primarily inattentive presentation, or ADHD. Sorry for the confusion. Oh my god, this. People always assume wanting everything to be clean and washing your hands religiously equals OCD. Hell no, OCD means doing these things compulsively, lest something happen if you don't, lest the world end unless you do it in a particular order, lest you sit in a constant state of agitation and severe anxiety until to fulfill your compulsive behaviors. Oh man, this one makes my blood boil. I love the episode of Scrubs where Michael J. Fox played the OCD doctor. His OCD is played off as a joke for part of the episode, and many of the doctors are jealous because his OCD makes him a good doctor in some ways, but the episode ends with JD watching him have a breakdown because he can't get satisfied with how he washes his hands after surgery. I know you specifically called out the washing hands stereotype, but in this case it's not just how he washes his hands a lot, it's he washes his hands so much he literally can't go home after a long day at work. It's a good dichotomy of how OCD is often viewed versus how it actually affects the people living with it. Oh my god, and it's not just normal people. I had severe OCD and panic attacks as a little girl, and my parents asked my psychiatrist to evaluate me for OCD. She wasn't interested in that diagnosis and decided I was bipolar instead, even though I didn't fit criteria for bipolar. It screwed up my entire adolescence and young adulthood, and I'm still not fully recovered from the trauma of having that diagnosis, not to mention that I'd never gotten treated for the OCD I'd had since I was 2. If you're reading this, Dr. Greenberg, fuck you, and go educate yourself. That violence in the world is getting worse and worse. Actually, in relation to the world's population, we live in the most non-violent era in history. The problem is that, while 500 years ago you might have not even heard all the news from within your city, we can now hear all the horrible news from all over the world, and we're also more people. But still, Human interaction and conflict in general is much less violent than it used to be. Absolutely, we now have laws in nearly every country against rape. During the Black Plague, people would confess their sins as they were dying, and a common one was murder. We have forensics, anti-corruption measures, ways of finding lost people, not to mention global media that espouses universal rights for all. In Belize a few years ago, a driver was complaining to me that children there watched too much American television and had started telling their parents they can't hit them anymore. I mean, think of when slavery was common. Not even in recent memory but 2,000 years ago. We have global efforts and organizations tackling trafficking. We have NGOs and foreign aid and peaceful mass migration. Life is the best it's ever been in the West and improving steadily globally. If we can close the wealth gap and keep lifting everyone out of grinding poverty, violence continue to decrease. The one thing everyone thinks they know about lemmings is bullshit. They're not suicidal, and will not succumb to herd mentality and follow each other over a cliff in a big group if they're scared. This fact originated in a Disney-produced nature documentary. Documentary in a very loose sense. They literally made shit up whole cloth because it looked cool on camera. They chased the lemmings over the edge of a small rise, and used camera tricks to make it look like they were falling to their deaths. Then the lemmings became a pop culture metaphor for harmful conformity, and cartoonists all over still reference it. That being said, there are ways to increase your chances of conceiving a baby of a certain sex, but it has to be done at conception and can't be done once you're already pregnant. And these things can be done with between 70 to 80% accuracy. However, there's always that margin of error, so you have to be okay with having either gender. And trying to conceive a girl is a lot trickier than trying to conceive a boy. It all has to do with when you have sex in relation to ovulation, as the different sperm, boy/girl, have different characteristics that lead to their success in the sperm race. But again, it's never gonna be 100% accurate. Insanely cool though. Along with all of the above listed, the student body of my 90s middle school decreed that if your thighs touch you are still a virgin, but if they don't you're a slut and all the boys can smell your vagina. This led to a lot of terrible jokes and some girls improvising douches. A particularly popular one was using body spray, alcohol-based body spray right on your inner labia. Fortunately, the girls' teacher, who also taught sex ed each year, informed us to not spray anything alcohol-based on our nethers and that the boys were trying to one-up each other to show off. They were also corrected by the boys' teacher, so it ended there. History is filled with this stuff, but I'm gonna go with general misconceptions due to an inability to read history in context. Often if you read a funny and strange story where you go haha those dumb superstitious people in the past, in reality there isn't superstition behind it, there's politics and power. For example, if you hear of someone being excommunicated and declared a witch, heretic for some odd reason, the truth is the given reason is just a made-up excuse, and the real reason is political intrigue. Modern corsets, for actresses, can be very uncomfortable for several reasons. The costuming department may not have experience with properly drafting a corset on the actress's body, which might need padding in the bust and hips to match the desired silhouette instead of restricting the waist. Or, the person in charge of making the corset doesn't have time to ensure it's properly fitted and foundation garments aren't worn. A corset should never touch your skin directly, in order to fulfill the director's budget, vision. Or, most commonly, the actress isn't given adequate time to break in her corset for all-day wear. A good corset is like a good pair of boots. It will hurt if you don't spend the time to make it conform to your body's movements. I believe actresses when they say they hate corsets, and I don't blame costuming departments for not bringing in corset makers, or hiring the workout, since a real corset can take months to make and require multiple fittings and weeks of breaking in. I do, however, blame the leadership on set for expecting their actresses to endure major discomfort when it is wholly unnecessary. That you get warts from frogs. Warts come from the human papillomavirus and come from contact with the virus through broken skin. It is a human-specific virus and cannot be spread through different species.